Black Adam? I mean, it's alright.
No, I am the Father.
And here we go.
That belongs in a museum!
Are you telling me that you built a time machine? Out of a DeLorean?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
This is Sparta!
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
Dr. Grant, my dear Dr. Sattler, welcome to Jurassic Park.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Easily Entertained. Today we're not doing the video recording side of things as I'm home for the holidays, and also because I am pretty much just kind of lazy. I did bring my tripod, I just didn't actually set it up to record myself in video form. So today is just going to be an audio only episode, which is totally fine. That's mainly what you're here for anyways. So yeah, today we are going to be talking about Black Adam, which is a DC movie. I'm sure most of you guys have heard of it at least. It's starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and yeah, so he's kind of like the original Shazam almost, because in the Shazam movie, and I think canonically in Shazam, there is a council of wizards that summons this child, basically, or like a person who is a champion, and they're supposed to stand up for all that is good and whatever. So in this, basically what happens is, so a kid in like ancient times, I believe the city or country was called Kondak. I think Middle Eastern, African. I can't remember exactly. I think around there. But so basically this child, was chosen to be a champion. But during like this war that was happening in Kondak, his dad was kind of like struggling, and to basically save him, he gave him the powers of like Shazam, essentially. And so with that, the new champion now was the father, and the son died because he gave up his powers. And so kind of out of revenge, the dad goes off to like essentially terrorize the leaders of the country who were terrorizing everybody else. And so it's kind of interesting. And Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, I have mixed feelings about him. I think he can be cool. However, as a main character, it's so much one-liners. It's not really like a lot of meaningful dialogue, it feels like. The movie is kind of what you would expect. It's basically just like a mindless action movie with really cool visual effects and explosions and fighting, and yes, that was some really cool aspects to it. However, I don't think superhero movies just have to be action-packed. I feel like there can be a lot more to them. And so, I don't know. Like, it is kind of what I was expecting. I wasn't expecting, like, phenomenal writing. One, because it's a DC property, which is so sad to say, because DC characters are actually really cool. Superman is an awesome character. People really think he's lame because they make terrible movies about him that only really touch on the basic stuff. Or we get, like, the DCEU, where Zack Snyder did him, and he kind of feels not like Superman. He feels more just like a god, whereas Superman isn't necessarily Superman. Superman is the alter ego. Clark Kent, the person who's basically human, is the actual character, and that's like the whole point of him, because Superman is like human essentially. Like, even though like he's from Krypton, he's the last son of Krypton, he has his own humanity. He cares about people. He wants to save people. And that's how Superman should be done. Or Batman, he cares about life. He watched his parents get murdered, so he became a crime fighter in order to make sure that that doesn't happen for other people. However, that's not how he's currently written in the DCEU, because, and I feel like that's sometimes a lot how he gets written, is people forget that Batman, although he is like kind of dark and gritty and he fights crime, he's not just a crime fighter. He cares about life. He doesn't kill people. Even the criminals, even if they almost kind of deserve it, they don't deserve to be killed. And so that's like the whole point of Batman. And then you have like Batman v Superman, where he uses like guns and fires off explosions and for sure is killing people. That's so not the point of Batman. So the DC movies kind of just get a lot of those characters wrong. And although I am not the hugest fan of the Arrowverse, which is the CW shows like Arrow and The Flash and Supergirl, one, I'm not a fan because I think a lot of the CW shows are kind of just like soap operas. Like, they're written like soap operas. They're kind of just like soppy, and like their stories aren't like super intricate and grandiose as they could be. Which is like, if you enjoy them, that is great. I think it's fantastic. I really liked Arrow for a while, and I did like the first couple seasons of Flash and Supergirl. I thought those were all good. And then I kind of just fell out of it. And that could just be me. They could just not be for me. But if you enjoy them, that is totally fine. We are easily entertained. You can be easily entertained by whatever you want. I'm just not super into those shows. They're easy to watch for sure. They're just not for me. But the DCEU, which, by the way, I keep saying that means the DC Extended Universe, that is pretty much like the movie universe for DC, that is owned by Warner Brothers, which technically Warner Brothers owns all of DC properties. But anyways, with Black Adam, so DC was one reason why I kind of wasn't expecting tons, because they kind of have failed with like their main universe. I think their standalone stories have been really good, like the Joker, the Batman, even like the older Batman movies. Harley Quinn was good. It's like the emancipation of Harley Quinn. I thought the Suicide Squad was pretty good, which is part of the universe, but it feels separate, you know? It's done by James Gunn, who did Guardians of the Galaxy, and I feel like he has more of like the Marvel style, essentially. But I like how it was done. I thought it was really good. But Black Adam, it's kind of just like average screenwriting. It feels like nothing extraordinarily happens. Which, in fairness, like, it's a basic story. It works. Like, the kind of story they told works. This guy, he wanted revenge. He kind of has to learn that revenge is not really the way to go. But that just seems like a really basic story. However, yeah, it's a basic story. It's a safe bet. You can make money, and they're using a big A-lister. Like, that makes total sense why they would do that. So they kind of get that in. But speaking of that, though, at the end of Black Adam, we get like an after credits scene where Black Adam sees Amanda Waller, who's like, "Hey, you are going to have to stay here or else we will have to stop you." And, you know, it's like the DC thing. They're setting up things that they're probably not going to follow through with because they're going to reboot the whole freaking franchise. So we'll see where that goes. But anyways, he's like, "Oh, well, whatever. No one can really stop me if I ever decide to do that." And then Superman shows up, and he shows up as Henry Cavill. However, as of recording this, Henry Cavill is no longer returning as Superman, which I think is kind of sad. And there's been some controversy about it, saying like Dwayne The Rock Johnson like got him to do that, and it was kind of for like a public stunt or whatever, but really didn't have any intention of helping him come back. I don't know. I don't know the full logistics of it. However, I know James Gunn I believe him and another director or producer, I think they were announced to be like kind of in charge of rebooting the DC universe. So it's kind of interesting because like they're gonna change a lot of the actors. I know some of them they're keeping, so like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, which I think is a really good choice. I think she plays him phenomenally. I know they're keeping Jason Momoa. I do believe they're changing who he plays though, which will be interesting. Which I like Aquaman, so I thought that was good. However, with the whole Amber Heard situation, I kind of understand that being a little iffy. But yeah, but so they're not keeping Henry Cavill as Superman, which I think is kind of sad because I liked him as Superman. I thought he fit the look. I think if they rewrote his character a little bit to be more of like a loving kind of guy, like he has his humanity, even if he's like kind of tough. Like, I mean, Superman isn't really tough per se, not in like personality wise, but like tough as a character. He's strong. And so I thought he would stay really good, and I was hoping that we could see more of him and like hopefully get him more as like a really good guy and get more like true to Superman storytelling. However, they decided that he's not going to be returning, which is sad because he did quit The Witcher season 3, I believe. Season 3 or 4 that he quit as Geralt of Rivia, which I loved him in that series. So I was kind of sad, but I was like, hey, I understand he's going to go and do other things, and he probably wants more time for Superman, which I totally get. And then he ends up not having to come back at all, which is kind of sad. But I did see that he is going to be in like a Warhammer series or movie that is upcoming. I think I saw that, which sounds pretty exciting. So I'm going to totally keep an eye on that one, and we'll probably review it here. And so that'll be very interesting. I don't know, like DC as a whole is kind of just iffy. I think their live action movies are very, very hit or miss. Because some of them I don't mind, like the DCEU movies. So I'm not talking about like the Dark Knight, the Joker, the Batman. I'm talking about like the main like continuity of it. So like I thought I did like Man of Steel. I think it could have been better. But I did think it was good. I do really like Wonder Woman. I think the first one is fantastic. I do think the sequel was a little It wasn't great. I thought some of the writing was a little strange, particularly the dialogue. And I don't know, it just seemed weaker than it could have been, which like I know it was like still fine like in terms of like a movie. However, I just think it could have been better for sure. I like that. I really like Shazam. I think that one is very fun. It's like such a easy one to watch, and because it's like it's just these kids who get superpowers and they're like, oh my gosh, I can do this, and that's so cool to me. Which I have met the two main characters for that movie, which are Asher Angel and Zachary Levi. I even have a picture with them, which is so sweet, and I got it signed by Asher, which is really cool. I don't know, maybe I'm kind of being a little biased towards Shazam. Maybe. That's okay. I like Shazam. I think that one is really good. And I liked The Suicide Squad, which is like, in a way, the reboot of Suicide Squad, but also kind of not. I don't know. I thought that was kind of weird that they just titled it The Suicide Squad. I think they could have titled it something else. Oh, and Birds of Prey, the emancipation of Harley Quinn. I thought that one was really good too. I don't know. I like DC, and I think DC has some good characters. Like their animations, I think, are fantastic. Injustice, Batman, The Killing Joke, The Long Halloween. I think those all do fantastic. And I think here's a thing that I think DC could totally do, and probably no one would say anything about it, is if they just pulled a lot into making really good animated films. I think that would be a much better strategy for DC, because I don't know what it is, their animated movies stay way more like faithful to the comics. I think they actually understand the characters. They get to do animation style, which gets to be more like the comics. Essentially, it looks like you're seeing a moving comic on screen, so it kind of just fits into that a lot more than like movies, because you have like the classic like white eye thing that comic book characters have. Like I feel like most noticeably on Batman, that's like the way you get like any of his like possible emotion from him. But you can't really do that with a live action version of the movie. Spider-Man, they figured out a way to do it, which I was pretty impressed by. I didn't initially care for it, but now I think it's very smart that they can do like the animated eyes thing. And they have like reasoning behind it, and it doesn't just look like a weird mask is moving their eyes, because I feel like that would be kind of weird in a live action setting, but it is what it is. But anyway, sorry, back on track to Black Adam. I don't know, like it was all right. Like I said, like it was fine, and it was enjoyable. It was kind of entertaining. But I'd say for almost like the wrong reasons. Not necessarily wrong per se, but just like for not the right reasons. Like it wasn't like the movie was fantastically written, the villain was really good, the story was well done. I think like that would have been something that was like really nice. But I did like that it introduced us to some other characters like Dr. Fate and Hawkman and Cyclone and Atom Smasher, although he was played by Noah Centineo, who I don't particularly care for. Why he was in that, I don't know, but hey, he must have auditioned for it. He probably did something in the audition that they liked, and so they cast him, which is fine. I'm not a huge fan of him as an actor. However, that is just personal preference. Other people I know love him and think he's fantastic. That's okay. They're allowed to think that way. And if you think that way, that's okay too. But I did like that this movie introduced us to some of those other characters. And it didn't feel like fully like forced. Because sometimes I feel like that is the case. Like things are forced into movies just to be like, ooh, look at this thing, look at this thing, oh, look at that. We're like, okay, yes, we get it, but this is not particularly contributing to the story. And I feel like with this character, because he is more anti-hero-ish, it kind of made sense to be like, hey, we need the Justice Society to come and take care of this, which I don't know if the Justice Society is those characters canonically in comics. I'm not entirely sure. I need to read more DC comics to probably fully understand everything. I know a lot of stuff about characters. Even if I don't read everything, I understand and get information in other ways. However, I do not know much about the Justice Society in the DC properties. But yeah, I like that it did introduce that. And as kind of corny as Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is, he is somewhat entertaining, because he's just like he is putting his all in, and he's acting like his acting is like serious. Even if they're usually like one-liners, his character does like take himself very seriously, and I do kind of like that. So it was interesting in that respect. I just kind of expected more, but because it is a DC movie, I didn't really. So yeah, that is what it is basically, but that's okay. I thought it was still pretty interesting. I could say it was easily entertaining. But yeah. Yeah. Black Adam. It's on HBO Max now. If you want to watch it, you should go check it out. Heck to the yes. And we will see you in the next episode. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to Easily Entertained. If you enjoyed, be sure to tune back in Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time to hear all about entertainment. Easily Entertained is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and anywhere else you get your podcasts, even in a video form on YouTube. Also, check us out on social media on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter under Easily Entertained for more updates on new episodes and extras on all things entertainment. Until next time, this is Easily Entertained.